Hey guys, I hope you guys are doing well. So let's talk about chapter 7, flavors and flavoring. All right, so here we're going to start talking about the senses. I know I talked earlier about the 5 senses that you have. You have sight, smell, taste, hear, your ears, you're listening, and sight. What am I missing? Taste, smell, sight, hear, touch. And so flavor, you're looking at when you put something in your mouth, what are you tasting? It's the aroma, the sensation. What is it? It's kind of the hue of the color. Okay, it's the hue of flavors. You know how you will taste something, let's say you taste lemonade, and you taste the lemon and you get the tart and then you get the sweet after. Okay, so it's kind of looking at the complexities of the layers of flavoring. Okay, what hits you first? What hits you second? Have you ever tasted something that you taste and you're like, oh, that tastes good, and then you get the pepper in the back of your throat, or you get that cayenne where it's like, oh, it's got a little spice to it, it's got a little kick to it, so you have a great flavor here, but then you get the kick. That's your second layer. All right. Have you ever tasted something and you taste it, it's good, and then it just has a bitter flavor at the end, or that back taste. So you want to be aware. You want to start tasting your food for flavor. You don't want to just, now that you're in culinary school, you want to start tasting. It's not just eating. You want to taste. What am I tasting? What's on my tongue? Because you got to start becoming, being able to point out the specifics of what things are. I've had students before, they'll bring me a dish and they're like, chef, you got to taste everything and tell me what it is. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I taste and I'm like, oh, there's some cumin, and oh, there's a little cayenne, and nope, there's the ginger, and there's the garlic. And they're like, how do you know that? And it's because I taste. I've been defining and refining my palate for 20 years. I taste things. I'm cooking and I taste at every layer. If I'm making a sauce, I first taste, let's say I'm using a stock as my base. I taste my stock. Am I tasting water and then chicken, or am I tasting the chicken? And it's, how prevalent is it? And so it's you're refining your taste. And so you have to start tasting at everything you make, at every stage. I add something, I taste. I add something, I taste. Because I want to know what's happening with the combinations. And that's how a chef, all of a sudden, you're pairing red wine with blueberries, and some sugar and some demi-glace. And now I have a red wine demi. How do you start pairing the lemon and sage with chicken? How do you use rosemary and thyme and garlic and ginger? How do you use these spices? Think of Indian, cumin, curry, cardamom, cinnamon, all these different things, and you got to start looking at these different flavor profiles, and it's looking at recipes, it's tasting food, and starting to understand that it's not just American food. It's not just fast food. It's trying things. So welcome to the Try It You Like It Club. And you might not like it, but if you get the opportunity to try something that you've never had before, try it. Because you don't know until you do. I'll never forget, when I was up in Atlanta, one of my friends was like, oh, we're going to go to this Vietnamese restaurant. And I'm like, I don't know. And I went and you know what? And I started tasting and I tried different things and I was like, oh, wow, I like that. Oh, nope, don't like that, but I like that. Like fish sauce. If you've ever had fish sauce in Korean cooking or Vietnamese, it's like overwhelming. And I can taste it immediately. It's like, oh, and you guys, when you guys get here, we're going to do a spice ID and herb ID, and you're going to need to taste and smell and be able to look at them and see what it is. So you're going to have those things, but we do that so you can start refining your palate. And that's what it's all about. You got to refine your palate, start tasting things. The taste you're going to are on our tongue. We taste is a sensation we detect with a substance that comes in contact with your taste buds. So you're going to taste sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and the umami. Okay, and the umami is that kind of that after effect. All right, that would be your umami. Think of mushrooms as that. So when you're looking at your human olfactory system, okay, so you're looking and think about it. You have, when you're eating, you can smell. You have your sense of smell, your taste, all at the same time. And you're using all your senses. What do we have? We have our taste. We have our smell. Hear, what's that sound? Shh. Sight, being able to see it, and then touch it. Okay, and what's that texture? I mean, think of like the texture in your tongue. I have a texture issue. Like if I have onions in my mouth, I love the flavor of cooked onions, but the texture I can't stand. But if you puree it, I'm okay. But if it's a chunk, I'm like, oh, I can catch it immediately. So I didn't realize that until I became a chef. I was like, oh, I have a little texture issue. So it's just kind of knowing those things. But looking at your mouth and how you're going to taste. You're looking at your tongue. Okay, your tongue has little taste buds. It has a little papier, and they taste. And usually when you're looking at this, you're going to look at. Usually you'll take the bitter will be on the sides. The salty you'll get kind of at the beginning, and think of spices. You know what? The more so, have you ever tasted something and you taste it and then it has a little kick it has a little kick, a little cayenne, and it's just a little light kick. But as you add spice, the more spice you add, it moves towards your tip of your tongue. So medium is going to be more like a Creole sauce, and then a Spanish sauce that's supposed to be really spicy. You'll taste it on the tip of your tongue. Now, a lot of students, they just add a lot of spice and, it should, but you want to develop those flavors. And I'll tell you, the Europeans know how to develop the flavor, especially Asian cooking. Asian cooking, they have those layers of flavors, and then you'll get the kick, you'll get the nice, but it's not that you taste something and your whole mouth is on fire. Like think of chicken wings where you get the spice, the hottest buffalo sauce. Your whole mouth is on fire. You're not tasting anything. You burnt your taste buds. Okay? So you want to really kind of look at that. Factors affecting the flavor and perception is temperature. You know what? Sometimes I'll make something and hot, it tastes different cold. So it's really kind of knowing, am I serving it hot? Am I serving it cold? How am I going to serve this? The consistency, the presence of the contrasting taste. Let's say I want to have a creamy lemon, okay? Creamy chicken with a hint of lemon. So that what do I want? I want to taste that creamy chicken, and then I want to taste that hint. So it's how do you get there? It's not just squeezing lemon, and then now I just taste lemon chicken. It's like, So the presence of fat. The presence of fat will coat your tongue a little bit. It changes things. It changes the texture. And then color, especially when you're looking at color. Anything the color of Pepto-Bismol, people, it's not good. So you want to make sure your colors look good. Compromise to perception of taste, age, health, and smoking. So age, I will tell you this. My mother, if you've ever been in a kitchen and you have an older people, they want their soup, boiling hot. And it's like, we're tasting it, it's hot. It's like, whoo, it's hot. But their taste buds, they're I don't know what it is, but their perception is that it's warm. And so you're always heating it up and all of that. But age, they have a different flavor. Health, if you have some health issues, sometimes the chemicals from the any kind of pills that people are taking, a metallic flavor, anything like that could come through. And then smoking. So I will tell you this, I was a smoker for 20 some years, and you know what, my taste buds were on point. But I have, they say smoking, it will dull it. So, I've seen both. That's one that I don't necessarily agree with, but at the same time, I know that I'm not everybody. Okay, so, but it can change the flavor. Start with simple combinations of ingredients. Add a little rosemary with some chicken, or add a little rosemary, garlic, and some citrus. It's just kind of starting to play with your flavors. Look at recipes, okay? Look at salmon. What are some things that go with salmon? What are some flavors that go with beef? Beef is going to take a stronger flavor. Salmon is going to take a lighter flavor. So it's kind of understanding those things. Select fresh food that's in season. Go to your farmers markets. Go to your fresh produce. Look at produce. People don't even shop produce. So in the coronavirus, you know what? All the meat's gone, all the canned food's gone, and you go to the produce area and that's full. And you got to start shopping in the produce area. Kind of, what's that? I've never used it. Hey, let's look it up. Google it. You got on your phone, I will tell you, I tell everybody in class, you have this. This is anything at your fingertips that you can look at. I didn't have that when I was in culinary school. I had to go to a library. What's that? And I had to get a big old book, and I had to carry it, and I had to look through pages to find stuff. You guys, it's a touch of the boop, boop, boop. We got recipes at our fingertips. We got anything we want at our fingertips. Use that technology, because that's to your benefit today. I can't tell you how many times I look up recipes, I look at things. I love it, So start using that. Start looking at flavor profiles. How can you, what's a good flavor profile for chicken or pork or beef, something that's different. What's an Indian profile? What's a Italian profile? So start looking at these things. You want to match up your flavors with the ingredients and the cooking technique. If I'm going to braise my chicken, braising is a long cooking technique where you take a tough cut of meat and you sear it to get some color, and then you cook it in a liquid to make it tender. And that liquid becomes your sauce, and that's a braised dish. I love like braised short ribs, braised chicken, braised beef. Love it. It's one of my favorites because you're taking a tough cut of meat that's cheap and you're making it fork tender. One of my favorite dishes is ossobuco. It's an Italian dish, and it's one of my favorites. You'll cook it here in culinary school. Preparations also impact the flavor of foods. The size of the cut. Always think about the size and the texture, how much flavor. If I give pieces of garlic that are that big, that garlic is going to, when you take a bite of something with that garlic, it's going to overpower your flavors. That's why we mince it. So it's kind of looking at those things. The temperature of foods impacts your taste perceptions and the flavors. Again, should I serve it hot? Should I serve it cold? Flavoring an item is adding new taste to food and altering the natural flavor. And you want to use, have you ever just ate something and you're like, oh, they just covered up the flavor? And you don't want to do that. You want to take that natural flavor and you want to make it bigger. You want to make it go wow, right? Flavorings include herbs, spices, vinegars, condiments. Think of barbecue sauce. I've done a blueberry chocolate barbecue sauce. It was so good with short ribs. I've done it with duck also. I did a balsamic barbecue sauce. I did an Alfredo sauce with smoked Gouda Alfredo sauce, and I used salmon. It was beautiful. So it's kind of, you start playing with things and getting creative and seeing, does it work, does it not? Seasonings, to enhance the natural flavor, salt is your enhancer, okay? Salt, you should never taste something and it be salty, okay? Salt is what brings out the natural flavors. It kind of enhances that. So when you guys get on campus and you guys are making sauces, and especially in sauces is where you're really going to see that, and you'll taste something, it will be a creamy chicken, hint of lemon, and it will kind of be flat, right? And you'll taste a little bit of the chicken, you'll taste a little bit of lemon, and you add some salt, and all of a sudden you taste that creamy chicken, hint of lemon, and it's there. It's like, it says hello. I always do that with my students. Hello, and it says hello to you, and that's what you want. And it's kind of using salt. People aren't used to using it, so they're always like, oh, it's salty. I'm like, no, it's not, I promise. And what you do is you're kind of tiptoeing up to that line. And there's a line, and once you cross that line, it went over to salty. And it's a salt lick, right? So you want to get as close to you can where you're like, ooh, wow, ooh. But it's not over it where you're like, salty, can't eat it. Take 2 bites and it's a salt, it's salt lick, I can't eat it. So, it's really playing with it. And, a little at a time, little taste. Every time I add anything, I little taste. And until you get comfortable with it, you got to do that. You guys should be tasting everything. Anything you make it, each step, taste it. Okay? Flavor profile. So top notes or high notes is the sharpest flavor, first flavors and aroma. And you're going to hit it. You're going to hear that, it's going to be the first thing. What is it that you should taste with, we'll say a barbecue sauce? What's the first thing that you're going to taste? Sometimes you taste that it's like a tomatoey, right? But it's a tomato sweet. And you can taste the herbs, you can taste the garlic. It all depends. If you're tasting a mustard barbecue, it should be mustardy. You should taste that mustard. If you don't, it's not a mustard barbecue, right? So it's kind of looking at those things and what do you taste. So you have your top notes, you have your middle notes, and that's kind of your wave. And you'll have different waves of food. If you've ever, I'll tell you, and I firmly believe, Asian cooking, they have those flavor waves that you'll taste something when you first put it in your mouth and it hits your tongue. You taste one thing, and then 2 seconds later you taste another, and the next layer you taste that next, and it's crazy. You'll taste that sweet and sour, and then maybe a kick of spice. It's crazy. I love it. So what are those low notes? It's that dominating. It's kind of that lingering flavor. The aftertaste. Is it bitter? Have you ever had like an aftertaste and you taste and it's like, ooh. Have you ever had lemonade? You didn't add enough sweetness to it and you're like, ooh, and those are things that you got to pay attention to. If you add a little sugar, what happens? It balances that sour. So how do you balance things? And that's what it is. Cooking, that's what it is. It's the balancing act to get it to perfect. Okay. You're rounding out those flavors, the unity of the dish. How is that sauce? Think of an Alfredo sauce with pasta. Adding pasta to the sauce, tasting the sauce by itself is one thing, but adding the pasta to the sauce, the pasta gives you a whole nother layer. And are you getting the flavor that you want? Do you need to season it a little more? Because now the pasta's added another barrier. Okay, so it's kind of thinking of those things and tasting those things. But you know what? You just got to play. A chef may rely on classical flavor combinations: lamb with garlic and rosemary. Ooh, apple pie with cinnamon. Okay, chefs will amplify their flavors by adding a pinch of salt, on their meat. And again, salt is an enhancer. Chefs may layer flavors, adding some lemon rind or lemon zest to it with some lemon basil. I have in my herb garden that I started during the coronavirus, it's a lemon thyme. It's so good. I squeeze in my hands and I'm like, oh, it just smells so good. And my peppermint, I love it. It's just blooming. But you gotta love these natural, fresh flavors. Season and flavoring should not hide the taste or aroma of your primary ingredient. Okay, so whatever that primary ingredient is, if I'm cooking some broccoli, how am I going to enhance that flavor and not cover that flavor up? Okay, that's what you want to think about. Flavoring should be combined and balanced so that it's not overwhelming the palate. And you gotta, sometimes it's not just, you don't want it so spicy, or you don't want it too lemony or that sour or bitter. Flavoring should be used to disguise poor quality or poorly prepared products. You don't want to do that. Here's the thing. Have you ever had something really fishy and it was disguised and you taste it and you're like, oh, it's fishy? It's probably bad product, to be honest. So it's kind of looking at those things. Flavors should be added sparingly when foods are being cooked. I like to use simple flavors to make it just punch and a good flavor. I like simple flavors, not a lot. And you just kind of enhance your food, and you just, ooh, I love marinades. I love, especially any kind of meats. I love doing a flank steak and marinating it. Flank steak is a good cut of steak, but it can be tough if it's not marinated. You got to marinate it. I marinate Worcestershire, soy sauce, balsamic, garlic, thyme, rosemary, a little olive oil, some salt, some pepper, and you let it set. And let it set for at least 30 minutes to an hour. And then you put it on the grill, and you're going to taste those flavors. And you cut it at a bias, and it's tender. It helped tenderize it as it flavored it. So, you can it's just learning these things. Taste and seasons food frequently during cooking. If I'm making a sauce, I'm not adding my salt and pepper until the end. If I'm cooking meat, I got to season my salt. I've got to season my meat with salt and pepper before I cook it. Have you ever tasted meat and you're like, God, it's just bland tasting? It's because nobody seasoned it before they cooked it. You got to season it before you cook it. So it's knowing when to use seasonings and when not to. So it's just playing. It's learning, and that's what we're doing, right? 6 general components help disguise the essence of many world cuisines. Primary ingredients is your proteins and starches, so you're looking at your international cuisine with that. Think of rice, right? How many times rice is cooked so differently? You got risotto for Italy, right? You got rice pilaf for France and the Americas. You have sticky white rice for Japan. You have jasmine rice for Indian, basmati for Thai. And you have all these different rice cookeries. So, fried rice is Chinese, and it's all it is rice. It's just knowing how to use rice. Religious influences. When I worked at the Swiss Hotel, we had a kosher kitchen, which is, Orthodox Jewish. And they didn't eat pork, shrimp. They didn't eat anything that was a bottom feeder. So I had to know those rules. I had to know what those were. I had to make sure that I knew exactly what I was cooking and when I was cooking it. Typical cooking methods, how are you, am I using a wok in Japan? How am I cooking in a Chinese restaurant? Cooking liquids, what kind of liquids are you going to use? Stocks or what kind of flavors? And then your fats and flavorings. So know what kind of fats to use. Hey, thanks guys. Thank you. You know what? Will you total up your numbers for me? You drive me crazy. I got students dropping off papers, their externship timesheets. So fats and flavors, am I going to use butter or am I going to use oil? Am I going to use canola oil? Am I using olive oil? What is it that I'm using? Because they change the flavor. It changed the flavor in what you're going to use. Every culture tends to combine a small number of flavor and ingredients so frequently and so consistently that they may become definitive of a particular cuisine. And that's it. You know what? Greece is tomato, cinnamon, and olive oil with your lemon and oregano. Northern India is your cumin, ginger, garlic. Southern is mustard seed, coconut, tamarind, and chili. I love the coconut. I love Penang Thai chicken. It's my favorite. Mexico, tomatoes and chilies, or lime and chile. You have all these different flavors, so it's kind of knowing. Think of the regions of the United States. Southern, you got your barbecue, right? You got your fried chicken, you got your collards, your mac and cheese, you got your, let's go over to Texas and Louisiana, we got our gumbo filet, and we got our Texas barbecue. If you go to, if you go to the northeast, you've got the seafood, right? You got Boston, and you got the crab cake and the lobster roll. You got all that fresh seafood. If you go, in the middle of the United States, you got all the corn and the Idaho potatoes, and all of those different things. And everybody has their own way of their breads and their potatoes, how they're cooking it. It's the same thing. Herbs and spices. Herbs, any large aromatic flavor. It has a leaf or a stem, and you're gonna learn them while you're here. You're gonna learn the dry or the fresh. When do I use dry? When do I use fresh? Great example, if I'm making a tomato sauce. If I'm starting out my tomato sauce, I'm using dried herbs, because if I add fresh to it, it turns it brown. But at the end, if I want to add some fresh basil or something, I do it at the end. So it's just knowing, when do you use dried, when do you use fresh. Spices, any large group of aromatic plants, where it's bark, roots, seeds, buds, or berries, used as flavorings. So, think of juniper berry, or a whole clove, or a cinnamon stick. Cinnamon stick is bark. So it's kind of just knowing what this stuff is. Any item added to a dish for flavor includes herbs and spices and vinegars. So you're just adding, you're learning how to use these, and what spices and herbs go together and what don't. And that's how you start to finish things. Thank you, sweetheart. And that's what it is. And it just comes in time. It comes with looking at recipes. It comes with, playing with it, and just cooking, tasting and cooking. Salt, the most common seasoning of all. You have all these different salts. I'll never forget, I was in Las Vegas, and I went to a conference there, and they were doing a salt. They did a salt class, and I tasted like 50 different salts. I mean, it was amazing. You had smoked salt. You had this it was Himalayan salt before I saw it on the shelves here. And you have the fleur de sel, which is nice for if I want to use it as a garnish. Sea salt, kosher salt, rock salt. Rock salt we're using for what? Pretzels. Culinary table salt. I use kosher and everything. Sea salt. But yeah, there's all kinds of different salts, and then flavored salts. It's have you had the bacon salt? Oh, love it. Love me some bacon. Burger. But it's using salt. Salt's an enhancer. Salt foods sparingly to start. You definitely want to use, and you got to be aware of hypertension and people who might have high blood pressure. They can't use as much salt, so you got to figure out what other things can you use besides salt. But salt's one of my favorite things to use. It's what makes a dish. Oils, type of fat that remains a liquid in room temperature. And then you have the lard. You have lard that is solid. Think of coconut fat, coconut butter, all of those things. So you have the vegetable oil, the canola oil, nut oils, walnut, hazelnut, olive oil, extra virgin, and pure. I will tell you this, extra virgin olive oil, you don't cook with. Everybody wants to cook with extra virgin olive oil. It's very, very pungent. If you ever tasted it or smelled it before you ever cooked it, that flavor's going into it. It's very strong. It usually is used as a finisher. You kind of drizzle it on something. So don't waste your money cooking with extra virgin olive oil. Flavored infused oils, you can easily, heat up your oil and then pour some basil, pour it on some fresh basil or some rosemary, and all of a sudden you're getting a rosemary oil, and it will have a little hint or hue of it. Garlic, citrus, whatever you want. So you can do infused oils. Vinegars, you have wines, you have wine vinegars, white wine, red wine, champagne vinegar. You have malt vinegars. I love malt vinegar. Best malt vinegar I've ever had was when I was in Ireland, and I had the fish and chips with the malt vinegar. Oh, they gave it to you in a brown paper bag. Oh my God, I ate it 2 nights in a row. It was so good. Distilled vinegars, your cider vinegar. I love apple cider vinegar. You can use that in so many things. Rice wine vinegar, any kind of tarragon vinegar, balsamic vinegar, rosemary vinegar, basil vinegar, raspberry vinegar. I mean, go to the grocery store, look at all the vinegars. There's so many of them, and we have so many here for you to taste. And then you have your condiments, relish and pickles. That's all think of vinegars. It's sweet and sour. Chipotle, chutneys. I love a good peach chutney, or a mango chutney, or a pineapple chutney. They're great. Fish sauce. Ooh. I can taste it a mile away. Ketchup, everybody loves some ketchup. Mustard, you got all kinds of different mustards, the yellow, the Dijon, the whole grain. Soy sauce and tamarind or tahini. All those condiments, start looking at them. What are they? How do I use it? Hoisin, how do I use hoisin? How do I use Worcestershire? Start looking at these things, see how it is. And then wines, I love using wines. I always use red wine, white wine. I got port wine, champagne. I love cooking with some bourbon. Bacardi. I mean, you can use wines, liquors. I mean, beer. I make a New Orleans beer barbecue shrimp with white wine and beer. Oh, so good. But you have your types of wines, your fortified wines, your fortified port, sherry, Madeira, Marsala. I love a veal Marsala. Oh, it's one of my favorites, and it's an Italian dish. So, it's just kind of knowing and looking at the varietals and all that. You'll learn, you can read up on that. Tasting wines, the aroma, the bouquet, the taste, and the body. So you have your beer, you have your water, your hops, your barley. Your barley is your malt, and then your yeast, that's your fermenting. So it's kind of looking at that, and people, I know people, they're real into beers. They're real into, it's finding different beers to taste with. We used to do like all these different oh, we're going to use this beer in this dish. And, it just gives it a different flavor. You have your lagers, your porter or your stout, your pilsners, your pale ale, your brown ale, your Guinness, so it's just kind of looking at all that. And again, it's tasting and knowing how to use these and playing. Bitterness may require sweetening, so use beer. You can use beers and marinades. I've done that. Beer batters. Start looking at your distilled spirits. Calvados is apple flavor. The Kirschwar is your cherry. What's your Frambo? That's I forget. I've used it many times. I can't think of what that actual flavor is. But you have these: gin, rum, tequila, whiskey, Scotch, Irish, bourbon, rye. You can cook with all of these, but it's learning how to use them, and how to use them properly and make sure it tastes good. Liqueurs, I love using liqueurs, like a coffee liqueur if I want to bring out a little more coffee flavor, or a mint liqueur, or a peach schnapps. So it's just playing with these. Flambe to cook, you got to have something with high alcohol. Usually I use some Bacardi. If you've ever had Bananas Foster from New Orleans, if you take some butter, brown sugar, you add your bananas to it, and then you add that splash of Bacardi and you let it hit the fire. You got a nice flambe, and it's just the alcohol cooking out. It's nothing scary, but it's beautiful, and then the alcohol cooks away and you got that bourbon flavor. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You know what, you just got, it's so much fun to cook and use alcohols and all these different flavors, but again, you got to start playing. Okay, it's go play in a kitchen, go get creative, go try things you've never tried before. Start going to restaurants you've never gone before. It doesn't mean you got to go spend $200 on a meal, but it means, if you've never had Indian food, go Taj or Namaste. They're great places. If you want Vietnamese, go to Pho Bac. It's great. I've been there. If you want good Chinese, best Chinese in town is Hunan Cafe down the street up Fierce Ferry. But all these different, what's your Japanese? Go Toki, Miyabi. Go try these restaurants and start seeing what these flavors are. Start trying something different. What is shrimp tempura? What is a California roll? What is butter chicken? What is a samosa? So start looking at these things and learning. And you know what? The more that you try, the more you're gonna learn. You're gonna teach your taste buds, and you're gonna start to learn. And you'll start to really see some things you really like. You might try some things you don't, and that's okay too. All right. Have a great day. Bye bye.